Could the war in Iran benefit Ukraine in its battle against Russia? Since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion in 2022, Ukraine has become expert at fending off drones fired by Russia, but designed in Iran. Known as Shaheds, they're a key weapon in Russia's war of aggression. Over the last few days, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has been touring the Gulf states, meeting leaders who are themselves now facing drone attacks from Iran. He has discussed a security pact with Jordan's King Abdullah and has signed defense agreements with Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Kyiv is offering to share its air defense expertise and drone technology. Zelenskyy is also looking for support in the Middle East to cover Ukraine's budget deficit and to fund weapons production. Anatoly Motkin says the Iran war has, quote, shone a spotlight on Ukraine's emergence as a drone superpower. He is the president of the StragEast Center for a New Economy, a non-profit based in the US that aims to develop knowledge-driven economies in the Eurasian region. Welcome, Anatoly. Ukraine is now helping Gulf countries defend themselves against Iranian drone attacks. How is it doing that, considering it has its own war to fight?
First, thank you first for inviting me here today. And it's true that Ukraine has its own war to fight today. But also Ukraine, I think, has today a unique data and expertise on how to respond to challenges like Shahed-Drones that you've just mentioned, and to do it not with the over-expensive tools like THAAD or Patriot missiles. And I think that's the main experience that Ukraine could deliver to the Gulf. We should remember that Ukraine, even before the war, we're talking about ecosystem that consists of over 300,000 engineers, high-level engineers, who provide the digital services without all Fortune 500 companies without exception. And just the full-scale invasion forced most of those companies to start developing dual technologies or defense technologies. So it's not that people who used to be work in other different domains decided because of the invasion to become engineers and to start developing those defense technologies. They used to be engineers. They just had to develop a new technologies to defend themselves. Now, during his trip to the Gulf, President Zelenskyy, it's true, he is the countries that you mentioned are Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Emirates, but it also Kuwait, as far as I know. So these are 5 countries that are actually in this loop. And I think that today, those countries in the Gulf, they experience exactly what Ukraine experiences for the last 4 years. They need to defend their strategic infrastructure, and they need to defend not only the military bases, as Iran claims, but also the civil population there. Both the local citizens and also the visitors to those countries. And for some countries like Qatar and Emirates, the non-residents are actually the majority, right? I think that Ukraine could deliver this specific experience, and we saw, I think, during the last months, many footages about the interceptor drones developed in Ukraine. So I heard yesterday CEO of Rheinmetall, Mr. Paperger, saying that the Ukrainian tech industry is mainly housewives with 3D printers. It's true that many components are printed on 3D printers, but the way how Ukrainians integrate the advanced technologies with the new developed technologies, and also how they reshape those technologies on the daily basis, because unfortunately for Ukraine, but they're tested on the battlefield. And it's not only Ukraine, it's also Russians developing their new technologies. So it's actually it's actually the cat and the mouse, right? So and they're trying to chase each other. So seeing what we see on the battlefield in Ukraine, we'll also see that Russians provide their adjusted drones. So at the first stage, at the very beginning, Iran was providing Shahed-Drones to Russia. Now in Tatarstan, Russians are developing their new adopted versions of Shahed-Drones, and they're providing these drones to Iran. So Ukraine is providing their new technologies to the Gulf. we saw that a Ukrainian tech sector and the Gulf countries started developing their, let's say, collaboration in tech sector several years ago, even before the war. But now it's very timely, and I'm happy that despite the war, Ukraine has an ability also to send their experts. And we know that some of the Ukrainian experts already are deployed in the Gulf states to assist to the local military to adopt their interceptor system and ability to the nowadays needs.
Mr. Motkin, you've made so many important points that I just want to take the time and go through some of them one by one. Ukraine was not always a superpower at blocking drone attacks. Can you walk us through how they've developed this defense expertise?
So, as I started, Ukraine was always a technologically or engineeringly advanced country. Even before the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukrainian engineers were the main, let's say, engineering force, or one of the main engineering forces in the Soviet Union. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukrainian engineers started providing digital solutions to American companies and European companies. And after some time, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Ukrainian also started developing their successful product companies. Today we have about a dozen unicorns made in Ukraine. After the full-scale invasion, Ukrainian engineers, actually it was a matter of survival, right? They started thinking how they could use their engineering thought to protect their own country. And moreover, at the very beginning of the war started on the Russian side with very not sophisticated way, with the 20th century missiles, 20th century tanks, 20th century cannons. And Ukraine started with the Bayraktar drones that they actually purchased from Turkey. And that's something that actually Russians were quite surprised. And Russians, the first initial wave of Russian offensive against Ukraine actually was blocked partially by those drones. And when Ukrainians discovered this ability to use new technologies, even against what Russians were calling themselves the second army in the world, they understood that they need to scale it up. And then the government created the demand. The Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine, and the person, his name is Mikhail Fedorov, he used to be Ministry of Digital Development of Ukraine, and several months ago he was appointed to become Minister of Defense of Ukraine. So he was the mastermind behind this initiative to create an incentives for the private sector, and not for the government or the governmental production plants, to develop whatever they think is the right thing to do, or the right products to do. Moreover, there was to avoid the bureaucracy, the tech sector in Ukraine is still, and from the scratch, they're communicating directly with the brigades, those who are fighting at the front line. So they have the speed that they get the feedback from the fighters is literally sometimes hours, sometimes days, definitely not weeks and months. And that's how they actually are able to adjust and to adopt their products on daily basis, on weekly basis, to the needs of the combat units. And what actually I understand from the tech guys there in Ukraine, and also from the military guys there, the life cycle of any technological solution on the battlefield is maximum 4 months. So it takes you to plan it 4 months in a traditional way, as it has been done in 20th century, it's not relevant at the day it's been produced.
You've written that Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and their Gulf region neighbors have been studying the Ukrainian experience. What can they learn from that?
They could learn several things. They could learn first adaptability and how let's say, to foster the development of the new technologies, and also how to make them all this production line, including the adoption of the new circumstances or new data, and also the reverse engineering. Some of the solutions that Ukrainians have, they also got from getting the first Shahed drone that was not exploded. They took it apart. They hacked also both software and hardware, and they took the technology, and they knew also how to defeat those drones for the next time. Also, they know how to work with the new advanced technologies developed by Palantir or Unreal or the most advanced AI companies in US, how they could also manage not a single drone, but swarms of drones. And how it could be self-managed when they sending those drones, and not necessarily the operator should keep operating them. So I think that the first thing they could teach the Gulf, their let's say friends or associates or colleagues from the Gulf, is actually what is the nature of the new warfare, both electronic warfare and the drone warfare. Don't forget that Ukrainians one-handedly succeeded to make Russian Black Sea fleet to flee from the Black Sea. There is no such a thing anymore as a Russian Black Sea fleet. And they're doing something similar also in the Azov Sea. And I think that that's something that could be very useful for the Gulf states. First, how they could save lives of their soldiers and still keep fighting against regional aggression. Second, how they could protect themselves and protect the critical infrastructure in their countries based on cheap technologies. Just to let you know that each missile of Patriot, it's millions of dollars. Each interceptor drone that is able to take down the Russian drone is about $6,000. So it's actually, sometimes it's 1,000 times, not 10 times, not 20 times.
Can you tell us, how do those drone interceptors work? Because they are at the heart of this technology transfer.
So there are several systems that actually work to intercept Russian drones. Some of them work on an acoustic system. One of the, I just don't want to mention his name, but he's one of the genius scientists in physics. And he used to work and still works in Switzerland. He's Ukrainian. And he built up an acoustic system that actually listens to the drones that arrive. And this system allows also to take down the drones with a gun and not with the interceptor drone. And it's also quite successful system that works. And it was developed. I think it's a unique system that has been not implemented or deployed elsewhere in any other country. Now, if we get back to the drones, they have radars. They have also the range of the drone that they try to see it, and to when it becomes relevant, it's about 5 to 6 kilometers. And I saw devices that were developed also in Ukraine with the 3 frequencies that they try to intercept the signal of those drones that arrive. And they see, they have also a small screen on this device. The cost of the device, just to mention, is $600. So it's something, it's cheaper than iPhone that you and I have, right? So, they give it to the soldiers on the front line. And what they tell me that if soldier see himself or his car on the screen of his device, he needs to escape. It means that the drone that actually arrives, because he sees what the other drone sees. They have some of their drones all the time in the air, and when they see some drone arrives, they just send over those drones, the interceptors. The speed of the interceptor drones is about 400 kilometers per hour. And it's many times it's faster than those drones that Russians, than Shahed-Drones. They're much slower. The explosive materials are about 100 kilograms of these interceptor drones, and it makes them faster and faster than the Shahed-Drones. And you could find footage even in YouTube these days. If you will Google, you will find how those drones arrive from back at the rear of the Shahed-Drones, and they actually, being faster, they just take them down. And that's mainly the principle how it works.
Thank you so much for that. Now, Zelenskyy is offering to share that expertise and technology with the Gulf states, hoping it will secure their support in return to fend off Russia. What could the Gulf states offer Ukraine?
I think that Ukraine is a hidden diamond for the Gulf investments. I think that Something that StragEast, also in collaboration with international financial institutions, started promoting in the Gulf even before the war, that investing into Ukrainian startups and Ukrainian tech companies, or also consuming the digital services from Qatar Airways to any other, to Aramco, from Ukrainian tech companies, will not only Ukrainian companies benefit from getting their new customers, but the Gulf companies will have the digital services in a way higher engineering level. I think that today, maybe even starting collaboration, technological collaboration, tech collaboration from defense tech, but it will open the door for future collaboration in any other technological domain. And I was talking to very senior people in Qatar who are advising the leadership of the Emirate, and they told me, Anatoly, we know exactly what's the difference between Ukrainian engineers and, let's say, Indian and Pakistani engineers, but actually we're a wealthy country, we have money for both. I think that Ukrainian engineering thought it's something that proved itself is not only as a high level of engineering thought, but it also proved itself as resilient. And it means that they know how to protect themselves. You could imagine how many cyber attacks Ukraine experiences on a daily basis. I believe it's hundreds to thousands. From Russian attacks to destroy, to Chinese attacks just to spy. And most of these attacks are blocked. So the experience of Ukrainian cyber and also any of their products to be tested in cybersphere, so it means to be safer than many other solutions, I think that that's something that the Gulf countries need. And I think that the last war just demonstrated that nobody is protected and nobody, even if he does not attack, could not be attacked by others. And Ukraine is a good example. Ukraine didn't attack Russia, Russia attacked Ukraine.
That's Anatoly Motkin of the StragEast Center for a New Economy. Thank you for sharing that depth of knowledge with us.
Thank you so much.
Do you think support from the Gulf states could be a game changer for Ukraine? Let us know in your comments. If you liked this video, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe.